Hello, welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with another update coming out for the war between Russia and Ukraine, and I've got a huge lineup of news that I'd like to brief you all on today. So I am feeling much better today. Thank you guys for your patience. I understand we only had one update video yesterday. I was sick, but I'm feeling a lot better after resting yesterday. So we're back at it for the most part, and we're going to talk more about this war today. So, not too many attacks to report inside Ukraine or Russia last night. It appears to be pretty quiet in terms of news of attacks, but we have very big news coming out from the US today. US stopped sharing intelligence data with Ukraine for strikes inside of Russia. The United States has temporarily cut off intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Officials said on Wednesday the latest blow to the relationship between the Trump administration and Kiev. Okay, so this is very big news today. We just heard a few days ago that the U.S. was cutting off military aid supplies to Ukraine. So we know military aid is not flowing over to Ukraine right now. It is a pause, and it could resume sometime in the near future. But right now, the U.S. is no longer supplying aid to Ukraine. Now, this very big news today as intelligence data has been paused as well. Okay, so from what I understand, it is a pause. It is not a complete suspension of intelligence sharing with Ukraine, but nonetheless, a very big update today. And this could affect Ukraine's ability to strike inside of Russia and also potentially make it more difficult for them to predict or have advanced warning of attacks inside of their country as well. If Russia launches a major missile attack onto Ukraine, this could be the prime time to do it if Ukraine does not have the intelligence to know ahead of time that they're about to be attacked. Okay, so this could be really bad for Ukraine in the near term, and Russia could definitely take advantage of this right now. And there's also some reports that are surfacing today that the UK also might be banned from providing intelligence with Ukraine also. So I thought that was interesting. I'll show you guys all those details here today. So let's go ahead and jump into the news, guys. No mainstream news article today, but we'll start off here with clandestine on X. Trump continues to squeeze Zelensky. CIA Director Radcliffe confirms the Trump admin have paused intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Radcliffe even admits this is to light a fire under Zelensky's butt to force him to cooperate with Trump's desire for peace. Trump is not playing. Okay, so take a look at this report today that came out. CIA director says U.S. has paused intelligence sharing with Ukraine. Trump administration officials say the halt in assistance is a warning to Ukrainians of the consequences of not cooperating with the president. And it says over here, March 5th, 2025, just coming out today, the CIA director John Ratcliffe said on Wednesday that intelligence sharing with Ukraine had been paused alongside military aid to pressure its government to cooperate with the Trump's administration plans to end the country's war with Russia. Speaking on Fox Business, Mr. Ratcliffe applauded the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's statement on Tuesday, praising President Trump and insisting that he supported peace with Russia. Mr. Ratcliffe said he thought intelligence sharing would resume. Okay, so yeah, this is yesterday that we reported to you guys. I actually showed you guys the statement coming out from Zelensky. He basically coming out and agreeing that peace is on the table, that he's ready to negotiate with Russia. Although I do have kind of like a 180 turnaround video to show you guys today. It looks like now Ukraine is kind of flip-flopping, at least Zelensky is, and now kind of stating in a way that maybe he's not going to be open to negotiating. So I don't know what's going on here, but this is probably more pressure just going on to Ukraine as, aid being cut off to Ukraine. It may affect them in the long run, but maybe not so much right now. We heard yesterday a Ukrainian official, I forget his name, but he stated that they could potentially have up to 6 months of supplies to still fight this war. So that may not completely put pressure on Ukraine to end the war right now. So maybe this intelligence sharing is going to put more pressure on Ukraine to potentially come out and say, hey, we're ready to negotiate with Russia. Okay, also for Max 24, until the exact date of peace talks with Ukraine and Russia is determined, between Ukraine and Russia is determined, U.S. will not supply weapons or share intelligence with Kiev, according to Axios. Okay, this is what Axios reported today. Supply of weapons and share of intelligence is going to basically be halted until Ukraine starts the peace talks with Russia. We haven't really seen that yet. We've seen indication that Ukraine is ready to start the peace talks. Russia's kind of like, yeah, we're open to it. They've been telling the U.S. that, but some of their demands that they want, Ukraine may not be favorable for these. So we'll have to see what happens here. And so far, not any concrete evidence that Ukraine and Russia are negotiating as of yet. Now from Bliskovka, the U.S. has stopped transferring not all intelligence to Ukraine, but only that which is needed for strikes on Russia, according to Sky News. That is, the states will provide data that can be used to attack Russian troops deployed in the occupied territory. So we're not going to read this whole article here, but it does say U.S. stopped sharing intelligence with Ukraine that could aid attacks inside Russia. Source tells Sky News. So I wonder if we're still going to see major drone attacks on oil refineries that we've been reporting a lot recently, oil depots, whatever oil infrastructure inside of Russia. I'm not sure if Ukraine needs that intelligence from the U.S. to carry out these attacks, but think about the missile attacks that we haven't really seen actually much of in the last couple of weeks. When Ukraine's launching ATACMS or Storm Shadow, anything like that, it's probably going to make it difficult for Ukraine to utilize those types of weaponry to strike inside Russia. And, this is the U.S. cutting off that ability for Ukraine to do so, and basically going to force them to the table here at some point soon. We'll see what happens, okay? Now from Bliskovka again, as of today, the U.S. continues to share intelligence with Ukraine, according to Cispil, if I'm saying that right. I believe this is a Ukrainian outlet, with reference to a source familiar with the situation, okay? So this outlet coming out and saying that the U.S. is still continuing to share intelligence, even though we're hearing from lots of mainstream news today that intelligence has been cut off for Ukraine coming from the U.S. Well, this outlet today is reporting the opposite, okay? So who knows what's really happening here, but most of mainstream media today is reporting that sharing of intelligence has been paused for Ukraine. Now from Premsika, Donald Trump has banned UK from sharing U.S. military intelligence with Ukraine. U.S. troops, weapons, listening posts are in the UK, but the government can't share intelligence with allies. Can't recall the UK holding a referendum to become the 51st state. Okay, so not sure how the U.S. would be able to do this, but maybe you guys can explain that to me down in the comment section. But apparently, there are some reports today that Trump has also banned the UK from sharing intelligence. Now, that would make sense because Europe could just go ahead and pick up the extra load if the U.S. starts cutting off supplies and whatnot. If the U.K. starts sharing intelligence with Ukraine or continue sharing intelligence, then Ukraine might still be able to carry out strikes, maybe with Storm Shadow or whatever. So it looks like the U.K. potentially has been blocked today as well. Now from Bliskovka again, Trump will consider restoring aid to Ukraine if negotiations are organized and steps are taken to build trust. This was stated at the White House by White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz. Okay, so that's what he stated today, that Trump is considering restoring aid and possibly even the sharing of intelligence if negotiations are organized and they can build trust between the Ukraine and also the U.S. again, and kind of restore the ties that were damaged over the last week whenever Ukraine Zelensky went to the White House and they had that disastrous conversation, started arguing. We talked a lot about that. So try to restore relations, also at the same time start moving on negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. Now for Bliskovka again, the U.S. did not restore military aid after Zelensky's statements about readiness to cooperate with Trump. This was according to the Wall Street Journal. The American president will restore aid only after he's convinced that Zelensky supports peace talks with Russia. The decision to temporarily reduce aid was aimed at showing the Ukrainian leader at the White House he is serious about achieving peace, according to officials. Even signing an agreement that gives American companies access to Ukrainian rare earth minerals may not be enough to convince Trump to restore aid, the publication writes. Okay, so Wall Street Journal reporting today, Zelensky calls heated meeting with Trump regrettable in bid to mend ties. Ukrainian leader lays out vision for path to peace, aiming to repair a relationship with U.S. president. Okay, so that was yesterday. Again on Tuesday, we had Zelensky coming out, regretting his decision to basically argue with Trump, kind of in a way apologizing to Trump, but maybe not completely outright. And maybe to try to mend some ties so that way the U.S. can lift some of these restrictions on Ukraine right now, maybe start flowing aid into their country again. And we're kind of seeing Ukraine moving that direction a little bit in terms of trying to negotiate. But who knows? Things can flip on a dime, and I do have some information in regards to that too. So also last night, Donald Trump, he held a speech to Congress for the very first time, okay, during his presidency here. So from Anton Gerashenko, in speech to Congress, President Trump repeated his previous statements regarding Ukraine. He believes that the U.S. spent more money than Europe. He also said he received signals from Putin that Russia's ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? He did not mention the freeze of military aid to Ukraine. Now, that's an interesting one that he didn't talk about that. So it's most likely going to be a temporary thing. We'll see what happens. The numbers he named are different from the vast majority of estimates regarding military and non-military aid to Ukraine. Okay, so Essentially, what he's going to talk about here in this video is him stating that he received this letter from Zelensky stating that Ukraine is ready to move towards negotiations, and he's hoping that that Ukraine and Russia will come to an agreement and peace will ensue very soon. Just take a look at this 1-minute clip from the Congress speech last night, okay?
Today I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians, he said. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. Regarding the agreement on minerals and security, Ukraine is ready to sign it at any time that is convenient for you. I appreciate that he sent this letter, just got it a little while ago. Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful? Today I received an...
Okay, so based on this, do you guys think that Zelensky is serious about moving towards peace? I mean, he's been coming out and saying that a lot recently, sends his letter over to Trump, and he also posted this on X, which we showed you guys yesterday. Also from Megatron Ron, breaking after the U.S., Germany has also stopped the delivery of weapons to Ukraine, but not because it wants to, but because their weapons are at a critical level, says German Defense Ministry. Germany has reached the limit of its ability to transfer weapons from its arsenals to Ukraine. Okay, so this is very big news today. I'm not sure if this was stated by Boris Pistorius. It probably was. But looks like Germany's in a tough position right now to be sending over weapons to Ukraine. If they don't have weapons, they're one of the biggest suppliers of weapons to Ukraine right now. Germany provides lots of weapons to them. So not sure how that's going to go, but that's another, set of bad news here coming out from Europe now, as we know that lots of military support is going to be going to Ukraine in terms of funding. But if they don't have the weapons to send to Ukraine, what's going to happen over here? So I guess it's going to get very interesting to see what's going to happen. And we know many European nations right now are broke right now too. So I don't know how they're going to fund a lot of this if it happens to go the way of the U.S. completely pulling support for Ukraine, suspending it indefinitely, and then Europe has to pick up the load. This whole situation over here could be catastrophic in a short amount of time. But let me know what you guys think, okay? Now for Max 24, a new wave of Ukrainian refugees is expected in Germany due to the cessation of aid from the U.S., according to Welt. So Welt reporting today that Ukrainian refugees might start fleeing the country maybe at some point soon due to all this aid being halted. And Germany could be seeing a lot of these refugees coming into the country. Maybe a lot of people are going to start leaving Ukraine very soon, depending on how long the aid is cut off. Now for Vice Grad 24, Macron announces he will deliver a special speech to the nation tonight. My dear compatriots, at this time of great uncertainty with the world, when the world is facing its greatest challenges, I will address you tonight at 8 p.m. Okay, so it looks like tonight Macron's going to be holding a speech and addressing the French citizens tonight, and I'm curious to see what he's going to be talking about. I'm sure we'll have that information. I can either bring it to you later today if it comes out. If not, we'll talk about this tomorrow, okay? Now for next, Ukraine may get a Starlink alternative. EU in talks with, I don't know how to pronounce this company's name. I don't know if it's Eutelsat. The Franco-British satellite group, Eutelsat, is negotiating with the EU to deploy its OneWeb satellites in Ukraine as a potential alternative to Elon Musk's Starlink. Reuters reports, why does it matter? Ukraine heavily relies on Starlink for military and critical communications, but Musk's unpredictable decisions have raised concerns he could cut off access despite his repeated denials. Okay, so the EU might be trying to replace the Starlink terminals inside of Ukraine. We know Ukraine uses Starlink right now. I know the Russians do as well. And we've been hearing recently that Elon Musk has been pressured to try to cut off Ukraine's access to Starlink inside of this war. So if that happens to be the case, looks like the EU is trying to work towards getting their own alternative to Ukraine so they can continue using some form of satellite internet or communications inside of Ukraine. Okay, so that's interesting coming out today. Now from Jay in Kiev, news only gets better and better. European Parliament plans to deprive Hungary of voting rights. This came out today from Politico. European Parliament proposes to create a common European army, also from Politico. So that's interesting because I'm pretty sure Hungary would probably try to block that. And we heard that recently. I just showed you guys a post coming from just a random guy on X recently, and he was stating that the EU should try to move towards blocking Hungary of their voting rights, so that way they can pass a lot of bills through the European Parliament and try to start doing certain things like building up more support for Ukraine, create this common European army that Hungary might be opposed by doing. So that was interesting coming out today. Looks like the EU is going to try to move towards blocking Hungary of their voting rights. Now for the Ukrainian review, Russia struck an energy facility in the Odessa region, according to DTEK, which is a major energy company out of Ukraine. Fourth attack on the region's energy system in 2 weeks. Emergency recovery work will begin as soon as possible. Okay, so just over the last couple days, we've been having daily strikes inside of Odessa. Lots of energy facilities being struck over there. People being left without electricity. This is in southwestern Ukraine, and this city's just been getting hammered lately. And Russia's been deliberately targeting, is what it looks like, energy facilities almost daily over there. So DTEK came out with an announcement that one of their energy facilities have been struck in that area. So they're going to be struggling with electricity over there. Now for Max 24, Daily Mail reports, Macron and Starmer are ready to travel to Washington with Zelensky next week to present a plan for resolving the war in Ukraine. The U.S. has banned the U.K. from sharing Washington's intelligence with Ukraine as part of its shift away from supporting Zelensky. All right, so so this top part up here coming out from the Daily Mail today, we're hearing that Macron and Starmer might be traveling to Washington to meet with Trump and presenting a peace plan to try to end this war. But I did see some reports coming out today that Macron has not planned to go to the U.S., so I'm not sure if Starmer will just go there by himself. Both of them literally were just in Washington in the last week or two. Could they be going there to Washington soon? Maybe Starmer might, but I did hear that Macron is most likely not making any plans to go to the U.S. soon. So I'm not sure how that's going to go, but that was reported today by the Daily Mail. All right, now for Max 24 again. Bild published 3 possible scenarios for Ukraine after the conflict between Zelensky and Trump. The first is concessions for the sake of weapons. Zelensky may agree to a rare earth materials agreement, with the U.S. to resume arms supplies. However, this does not provide security guarantees for Ukraine. The second is the U.S. withdrawal from the war. Washington may completely stop military aid. Ukraine will have to defend itself only with the support of Europe, which will not be enough. Third is defense. Without the U.S., Ukraine can continue to fight thanks to the help of Europe, restraining Russia. Such a scenario is possible if the West increases arms supplies. Okay, so yeah, these are definitely some different scenarios that could play out here. I think if the U.S. is not able to get Ukraine to come to the negotiating table completely and start ending this war with Russia, I think the third one could be highly likely. The U.S. or the EU, could start picking up a lot of the heavy load in terms of the funding. Maybe they'll start buying a lot of weapons from the U.S. and from their own nations and start supplying Ukraine that way. Not sure how long that can go on for, as the U.S. does supply a lot of aid to Ukraine. So, really any of these scenarios could be likely. You guys can let me know which one you think is most likely down below. Now for Max 24, Taiwan is studying the experience of Ukrainian companies operating during wartime to strengthen planning in case of a threat from China, according to Reuters. Local authorities are actively working to improve the warning system in shelters and also conduct civil defense training. I'm sure a lot of countries right now are really monitoring what's going on with Ukraine, especially these countries that could potentially be going to war very soon. China, I'm sure, is doing that. Taiwan, North Korea, Iran, many countries that could potentially be at war in the near term, I'm sure are using the Ukraine war to study it as much as possible and understand future warfare, okay, what's going on in today's wars. Now from Max 24, Mers reports, Europe must be able to defend itself. Europe's self-defense can no longer be postponed after Washington's decision to stop aiding Ukraine. Okay, so Friedrich Merz, the soon-to-be chancellor inside of Germany, stated this today. So once again, calls for Europe to start being self-sufficient, maintaining their own security, producing their own weapons, upping their own defense spending. He's making this call once again, okay, and stating that basically the U.S. is slowly starting to pull their support, not only for Ukraine, but for Europe, okay? We're starting to see that. The U.S. is pulling troops away from Europe. Could they pull out of NATO at some point? Who knows? I have some posts here talking about that as well. So Friedrich Merz today just warning Europe, hey, we got to get ready to be defenseless from the U.S. here very soon and start being responsible for our own security. So here's that report about NATO today. Next to reports, Trump signals U.S. exit from NATO leadership, power shift incoming. Trump is pushing to downgrade America's role in NATO, demanding Europe take on more responsibility for regional security, according to the Daily Mail. Plan in motion? Question mark. U.S. considering handing NATO leadership positions from American generals to European allies. Strategic shift or retreat? Critics warn this could weaken the alliance as tensions rise in Europe. Is Trump reshaping NATO or walking away from the U.S. global influence? I mean, you guys let me know what you think. Do you think that Trump is pulling away from global influence? Is he pulling away from NATO at some point? Maybe not right away, but maybe in the near term, maybe in the next few years or something. I mean, we've already been seeing him call on Europe a lot recently and saying, hey, you're going to be more responsible for your own protection, your own security. You need to do more for NATO, even calling on NATO to up their defense spending. So is this a tactic to kind of get NATO countries to start being more active within NATO and start producing more weapons and, picking up the heavy load that maybe the U.S. was for a long time? You guys can let me know what you think on that too, but there is a lot of talk recently that the U.S. could also pull out of NATO potentially, or start to withdraw a lot of their support from Europe. We're already seeing that right now. Okay, now from Max 24 again, China's negotiating with Russia to send its military to occupied territories of Ukraine to gain combat experience, according to TSNS. China, like North Korea, uses the war as a training ground for training its military. Okay, so multiple sources today on X were talking about this, that China might be negotiating with Russia to potentially send their own military over there to gain combat experience. Okay, kind of similar to what North Korea is doing. North Korea has been sending troops to Russia to help them out in the Kursk region. And yes, they are helping them defend their territory, but at the same time, they're gaining a lot of combat experience that they can use to take back to their homeland and, upgrade their own military and understand future warfare and how things are being fought on the battlefield right now, especially with drone warfare. That's going to give a lot of intelligence to many adversaries to the U.S. and also to Europe. Okay, so that was some huge news. Let me know what you think of that. Now for military news UA, Ireland to provide 100 million euros in military aid to Ukraine. Of this amount, about 20 million euros will go to demining and IT coalition fund, 80 million euros to the EU procurement fund for the purchase of radars and drone jamming devices and other assistance. The Irish government has also approved a bill that abolishes the need for UN permission to deploy Irish peacekeepers abroad. Okay, so that's interesting. I wonder if Ireland would be willing to send troops to Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire. Maybe that's what this is all about, but at the same time, 100 million in aid going to Ukraine. Okay, so more support from Ireland now. All right, now for Maria Drutska, we got a couple more posts to share with you before we get you out of here. Russia continues to show President Trump its readiness for peace by launching missiles and drones at Ukraine. And by the way, as some monitoring channels report, preparing for another massive strike. 115 UAVs were shot down. 55 did not reach their targets on the night of March 5th, 2025 from 7:30 p.m. on March 4th. The enemy attacked with 3 Iskander-M KN-23 ballistic missiles from the Voronezh region, 1 S-300 surface-to-air missile from Kursk region, and 181 Shahed-type attack UAVs, drone imitators of various types from the following directions: Orel, Kursk, Milerovo, Bryansk, Primorsk-Akhtarsk, Russia, and Chauda, if I'm saying that right, in Crimea. Okay, so here's this diagram coming out from Maria Drutska, sharing this today, that 115 UAVs were shot down. So it looks like potentially upwards of almost 200 being fired into Ukraine today. So another massive attack of drones going into Ukraine overnight. But again, not too much information today on strikes inside of Ukraine. I'm sure Odessa was getting hit once again, as they have been recently a lot. Now from the Kyiv Independent, these are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of March 5th, according to the armed forces of Ukraine. Okay, and our final update of the day, Russia's losses as of March 5th, 1,250 troops, 6 AFVs, 84 vehicles and fuel tanks. Wow, only 1 tank today. 23 artillery systems, 86 UAVs, 1 special equipment. This is probably the least amount of equipment I've ever seen being destroyed on the Russian side. I mean, look at this, guys. 1,200 troops, right around what we've been seeing, 1,300 on average. Only 6 AFVs, so usually we see double digits on that. Vehicles and fuel tanks, we usually see well over 100, at least 120 to 150 per day. And then today, only 1 tank being destroyed, okay? I think yesterday Not sure how many there was. I want to say there was only three, maybe, or five. There wasn't too many yesterday also being destroyed. Today, only one. So, looks like not very much going on the battlefield over the last 24 hours. Even artillery systems, many times we see 40 or more here. These numbers appear to be much lower over the last 24 hours. So I thought that was very interesting today. So tons of big news coming out today, guys, and I'm going to keep you guys updated on the situation with aid being cut off to Ukraine. If we hear that the U.S. Does the 180, starts opening up these weapon supplies and also the intelligence back to Ukraine, I'll give you guys an update as soon as I can. But right now, looks like Ukraine's going to be in a tough spot. Okay, no more supplies from the U.S. and intelligence data, so that means Europe's going to have to step up even more if they want to continue to help out Ukraine. But again, we are hearing that Ukraine does have enough supplies to hold themselves out in the meantime. So this could be dangerous for Ukraine. We could see Russia start to really make some gains, and maybe they're going to take advantage of the situation and start pushing more heavily on the Eastern Front. But let me know what you guys think about all these details today. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Share your thoughts, concerns, and opinions down in the comment section. That's going to be it for today's update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. With that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.